everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show. And I got to start with an apology right off the bat here. First off, we were late to the show. We had some TV stuff that we had to do, so I know we were supposed to start at half past the hour, so I reset the show for 10:40 to get going here. And then we started up the show, and man, oh man, what a show it was. The only problem is I hadn't clicked the live button. Ken just realized it about 7 minutes into the show, and boy, you should have heard me go off. It was a thing of beauty. It was absolutely phenomenal. Great takes. You're never going to hear takes like that again. It's Donald Trump-like big league takes. It was phenomenal. But you know what? We don't have time for me to get into all that kind of stuff. Let's just get into bringing Kenny in here because I've already wasted enough of your time, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us. Let's get Kenny in here. Man with the best entry music in the business. Let's bring him in. Looks like Kenny had to take a phone call if there's anything that could go wrong on top of this. Kenny was in the show and then his phone rang, so I'm going to take it from here. But I got to say, I hand it to Kenny. I had just gone and I took a big, huge chunk of the buffet to start off the show. And that's, I guess, where we'll start. But then I handed it over to Kenny, brought him into the show. I was thinking, why is no one commenting on his music? Best music in the business. And then Kenny started in and happened to notice halfway through his rant, he's like, Sean, buddy, you got to hit the live button. We weren't live. So my apologies for that, everybody. Sorry to make you have waited like that, but I appreciate everyone being here. And hey, let's get in and talk about it. That game, absolutely phenomenal. I'll do the Coles notes quick before Ken comes in here. Maybe we'll play his music twice. How about that? You know me. Everyone likes to call me the fun police. I've been that guy when they had big games earlier this year against the Toronto Maple Leafs when they played the Leafs, who were coming off back-to-backs against Minnesota the night before. Same thing with the Oilers before that. I take a look at that Blues game a couple games ago that I thought up to this point was the best game the Jets had played this season. There's a guy. We won't even play the music. But you know what, Ken? I was just saying, I take a look at that Blues game, and I'd said, you know, if you go back and look at that broadcast, I thought that was the Jets' best 60-minute effort of the entire season. I put that game up here. This game tonight, I put way above that game because I'm not saying that the Blues didn't have. I know that Blues didn't have their best that night, but I don't think that they were playing that bad. But this was a night where the Minnesota Wild come in, the hottest team in the NHL. They've gone 9-0-1 in their previous 10 games before that. Hottest team in the NHL, one of the highest scoring teams in the NHL, and they looked like neither of those things against the Winnipeg Jets. But at the same time, the temperature was up in this game. The Minnesota Wild wanted that game. The Jets just wanted it that much more. And hey, that's the way it should be. The Jets are in a position where they can't be giving anything away. They needed to be the team that wanted this more tonight. But that being said, you can want a game as much as you want. You're playing a really good Minnesota Wild team here who take a lot of games away from teams who want it just as bad. But the Jets on this night, I thought, looked close to perfect.
Yeah, impressive. And apologies to you and the audience. Our good friend Sarah McClellan was calling, and she's got one more question. The kneeing penalty is causing a lot of concern here. So let's do a little bit more tap dancing. Sorry,
you want me to do more tap dancing?
Yes,
okay.
I'm sorry. I'll be right.
Okay. No problem. There he goes. I want him to play the music when he comes back in here. I think I'm the only one who can do that, though. Right off the bat, I just wanted to say Connor Hellebuck talked about the front of his net. He thought that they absolutely owned the front of his net. If you've been watching this Minnesota Wild team, and I have, I've got the NHL package, and I check out a lot of their games. It's one of the things that they do as good as any team out there is they get to the front of the net. They're able to move that puck in and out of that area. They could not do that tonight. It's funny, we sit there and we think of a team, if you just simply look at the stats at face value, the Minnesota Wild, they came into this game the third highest scoring team in the league. Well, they dropped down to fourth because Pittsburgh put up some goals tonight, and the Minnesota Wild didn't. So now they dropped to fourth. Still extremely impressive. But if you want to know the hows, not just the Winnipeg Jets blanked and shut out one of the highest octane offensive teams in the league, that's how they did. They didn't give up the front of the net at all. I thought it was one of the most impressive displays that we've seen from a Jets team that, if you think about it, like, a lot of times they just seem to be no-shows when it comes to the defensive side of the game. It was a complete and total focus, I thought, tonight by the Winnipeg Jets on the defensive part of the game first. And I'll tell you this, Ken and I were doing TV right before this, and I teed it up to him. If you go check it out on sportsnet.ca, I teed it up to him saying this Winnipeg Jets team has clearly been a team that has shown us their faults and that they can be deeply flawed, and they have been for a lot of this season. But boy, oh boy, if you're a Jets fan, one of the things that makes it frustrating to see them as deeply flawed as they've been is because I think we all know they're capable of exactly what we saw tonight. This was a playoff-style game. It had the intensity, it had the hate, it had the attention to detail, it had those grinding type goals that you need to win hockey games. I just thought all around, and I'll pick up where we left off when Ken hopped out of the show here. I don't want to call that game perfect because there's no such thing as a perfect game. But Ken, I look at that game and I'm trying to find flaws in the Winnipeg Jets game. Not because I like to do it, but because it's our job to say, okay, they built this, but they need to go from here. I don't know where to look at that game. Their goaltending was phenomenal. Their defense was phenomenal. I thought they generated the right kind of offense quite often through the game. When the Minnesota made their push, I thought the Jets responded the right way. Right down to when they pulled the goaltender, the Jets' aggression when they were a man down, taking the puck away. And, I thought that empty net goal that Schmidt scores was very emblematic of that game. And, it's almost never that an empty net goal is like that. But they took the puck away and possessed it for a while against a team that had another man on the ice. They didn't panic. They didn't just whip it down the ice, trying to get it in the empty net. They set up the play, moved the chess pieces around on the chessboard, and just absolutely, I thought, played with a confidence I didn't think this team had in it in this moment. Just from, like I said, from start to finish, that game, I thought the attention to detail was like nothing we've seen from this Jets team this season.
Well, the blueprint, that's exactly what we saw. The problem, the blueprint hasn't been there enough. And if the Jets want to get themselves into a potential playoff battle of any sort, they're going to need that blueprint for more than one out of every several games. So, again, sorry, folks, for the delay. Our good friend Sarah McClellan of the Star Tribune in Minneapolis was just trying to get some clarification on what was said about the knee by Marcus Foligno. Apparently Dean Evanson has some pretty frisky comments about the original hit by Brennan Dillon. I'll try to find those for us here, Sean, as well. But in terms of the Jets' performance, you touched on it. Goaltending, excellent. Shutout, third of the year. Team defense, outstanding. Ability to clear the front of the net, impressive. Special teams, clicked one time. Mark Scheifele scores. And they had a ton of chances, and we'll get to that. I know folks are going wild in the chat room about Perfetti to Heinola. We'll get to that in a moment. This morning, Dave Lowry said his best players needed to be his best players. Well, Mark Scheifele scored a goal. Kyle Connor had two helpers, and Connor Hellebuck pitches a shutout after going 7 games without a victory. So I would say the best players were exactly that. To me, I was very impressed by a lot of things. The Jets were able to get their fourth line some shifts. Something, Sean, we've talked about this a ton. Jansen Harkins, tons of jump today. Christian Vesalainen, lots of nice, smart plays. Dominic Toninato draws a nice penalty with a very nice rush. Andrew Kopp moving into center. Well, that line was excellent with Andrew Kopp at center. Kyle Connor, you talked about the possessing the play. Kyle Connor fakes like he's going to shoot, gets everyone to come towards him, gives it back to Nate Schmidt to create the lane for the empty net goal. Jets penalty kill was impressive. I mean, not a ton of Actually, never mind. One penalty to kill. That was all. But
Yeah.
still, it was one of those in the game where it basically was Hudson Bay rules out there, Sean. And then you see this weak interference call that's called. Anyways, I love the intensity of the game from both teams. I understand some folks are not going to like certain things, but man, that's what you want to see from a team. When Connor Hellebuck comes on at the podium and says it's hard because good teams don't lose a lot on the second half of the year. This is why. This is the kind of intensity that you see. This is the kind of physical nature, the tilt. You're not going to see 3 scraps a night. That's not what we're saying in terms of the Jets. But you saw a lot of investment. That's a great word by the Comet. Tons of investment by a lot of players. A lot of people mentioning Christian Reichel. Reichel, I thought, was excellent. Really buzzing out there. Adam Lowry, that's one of the best games he's played this year, and not just because he had the 2 fights. Very engaged. They had the Lowry line at times going up against Kaprizov. You saw Joel Eriksson X line was a factor. And again, Sean, we got to talk about the defense. I mean, I'm going to hand it over on the buffet, but
no, get into it. Start it out. Go.
Well, I mean, this is something too. I mean, we talk about checking the receipts all the time. I'd like you to go back 2 months ago when I told you what pairing did I want to see together, Sean? What pairing on the back end did I want to see?
You want Nate to see Schmidt and Dylan.
Yeah, well, what are we seeing? Now
Schmidt and Dylan.
I know it's out of necessity, but man, I loved what we saw from that pairing today. And I mean, Dean Nevison doesn't like to hit. I didn't see it as a headshot whatsoever. Did you? I mean, it's maybe a hair late. It was maybe an interference minor, but I didn't see that as dirty play at all. I didn't see a target of the head. And, I mean, I understand Marcus Foligno plays the game hard. And, Sean, I've said this before, and I'm sure the chat room won't like it after a game like today. The Jets could use a player like Marcus Foligno, a guy that gets under your skin, can kill penalties, finishes every single check, and is also a double-digit goal scorer. But I thought it was a clean hit by Dylan. Those are the kind of plays that make him effective. That's what we saw on day 1 of training camp. And that's what we saw again tonight. I like what we're seeing from that pairing. And getting Dylan DeMello back, especially on a night where Neil Pionk was absent due to COVID. Morrissey and DeMello, also excellent. And I also like the third pairing. I thought Kovacevic did a nice job. Really enjoying the way that he's played. And I love the response from Ville Heinola. We know what we talked about at the end of last game. What we saw from Ville Heinola today was not a guy who played a tentative game because of what happened late in the last game. I liked what they played a lot. And just back to the play. Folks, I'm not condoning the knee to the head by Foligno. What I'm saying is that's the type of physical nature that you normally see. And I'm not talking about the knee at all. I don't like the knee at all. I think there could easily be a suspension after that happened. But I like the way that Marcus Foligno plays the game. He plays the game incredibly hard. He's a physical guy. And he's not afraid to drop the gloves. But yeah, I mean, how about Adam Lowry answering the bell, going twice with Marcus Foligno? Loved what he did in that game.
So I'm gonna kind of double down on what you're saying about Foligno and be like, I know he did something crappy tonight. It was crappy. There's no getting around it. There's no excuse for it. I'm not going to make an excuse for it. That's the kind of guy that you want on your team. He's been putting the puck in the net for the while this year. He's kind of emblematic of exactly what, sometimes people personify the blueprint of the team, right?
Identity.
On a night like tonight, I think Adam Lowry kind of personifies the blueprint, and Dylan as well personify the blueprint of what the Jets are trying to do. I think Foligno does that on the other side of things. I didn't have a problem with the hit, but I can understand when you're a big boy and another big boy takes a run at you. This is just the way that sports work. He was mad about it, and he wanted to go get his vengeance, and he turned around to go do it, and his teammate jumped in to take care of it. And while he was doing that, Adam Lowry grabbed him from behind and gave him the backwards yank, right? A little bit of the horse collar. I think that got him hot, right? Right off the bat, he's angry. He's turning around. He wants retribution. He goes to get it. His teammate has stolen his retribution from him. And then all of a sudden he gets yanked into a fight from behind that he's not really expecting. So he turns around and he's angry. And clearly I think he felt he didn't get the shot that he wanted in the first fight because of the way the fight starts with the yank from behind from Adam Lowry, which I have no no problem with. I love that Adam Lowry did that. Hey, Adam Lowry took the Superman punch from this guy earlier in the season, and to me, him giving him the yank from behind is saying, come try it again, big boy. Let's see what you got. So I love the way Adam Lowry responds. I can understand Foligno is hot after that because he wants retribution against Dylan, doesn't get it, gets hauled into a fight that doesn't start off well because he's not really prepared for Adam Lowry to come that way. And then so they go at it and they get back into it later in the game. And I think still he gets on the wrong, you can see he gets on the wrong side of Adam Lowry's arm. Adam Lowry does that perfectly in the fight. He gets a hold of him, keeps him away from him. He's got the longer reach. Foligno can't get a punch in, so what does he do? He finally gets frustrated and he just grabs and does the arm bar and plants him in the ice. But he didn't get the retribution he was looking for. He was frustrated. Adam Lowry did everything right there. I'm okay with everything that happens up until the knee. There's no need for that.
Of course.
That's a player who desperately spent that entire game looking for retribution and couldn't find it and was frustrated and tried to find it in a way you shouldn't find it at the bottom of a tangle of humanity after a fight like that. But I'll say this, I don't agree with that. There's no place in it. He should get there should be a look at that. There's no need for him to do that. I love that Adam Lowry put one of the best players and the guy I think personifies what that team is trying to do in a headspace where he was so frustrated tonight. He tried to do that. It's one of the reasons I thought that the Jets were as engaged as they were. I know there's a lot of people out there who don't agree with fighting in hockey, but I don't think anyone can really take a look at that and think that those fights, the way that they happened, didn't draw everyone into the game. The point's been made in the chat room. Everyone was pulling on the rope tonight on the Winnipeg Jets side of the ice. And I think that's one of the reasons why people get engaged. I just think despite the Foligno thing, and I think, Adam Lowry's a big boy. He's a tough guy. He doesn't agree with it, but he's going to be fine. He'll move on. But boy, oh boy, I loved the way the Winnipeg Jets handled the rough stuff tonight. They did a phenomenal job with it.
It reminds me of when Adam Lowry fought Ryan Reeves in that game in Vegas, right? I mean, that was a game where now you're taking on one of the toughest customers in the NHL. I think that was a time of the year where the Jets needed a boost, and they really got one from that scrap. Sean, let's just get into this. We love Dean Evison. I mean, he's a guy he's a Manitoba guy, incredibly intense. But here's what he says about the original hit by Dylan on Foligno that led to things kind of getting a little bit crazy with the twin bill scrap. We lost our composure, but rightfully so. I mean, if you watch the hit, he releases the puck, he takes 3 strides and then gets blindsided. I would say he's a little bit off in his calculations and mathematics personally, but I mean, that's a coach defending his player. If you're a hockey player, you're not expecting to get hammered from the backside like that. I mean, that's the hit that we don't want in the game, blind, has no idea it's coming extremely late. That's not a hockey hit. If he has the puck and whatever, maybe, but even so, it's still blindsided. If Marcus Foligno isn't as big and strong as he is, that player is probably hurt really bad. We didn't like it at all, obviously. We lost our composure a little bit, but we caught it. But Foligno was rightfully so frustrated, and obviously that's why the second altercation probably happened at the end. I mean, I understand you want to stand up for your players, but I mean, I'd like to see it again, but I thought it was a hair late, maybe, but like I said earlier, that's interference minor to me, and kneeing to the head is not the same as an interference minor, but again, you love the intensity, and this is why it's one of the greatest rivalries the Jets have. It's not just a geographical rivalry. These are two teams that don't like each other. Sean, we loved it when Bruce Boudreau and Paul Maurice kind of went back and forth a few times. Remember that preseason game where Maurice was pissed off? They ran out an AHL lineup and they got smoked, and then he didn't like it. And then in the playoffs, Bruce was talking about how they just want to, they don't even deserve to be on the same ice as the Jets. Yeah. I mean, again, I don't think that Dean Evison is trying to get into any personal attacks here. I think he's backing up his player. But I love the intensity, and guess what? This is going to make next week's matchup even better, right, Sean?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is amazing. The only bad news is that that's the last time these two teams are going to play this year unless there is a playoff matchup. So we'll turn the page on that. Again, you like to see both teams.
Before we do, Waiters asks, so is it a suspension? What's your take?
The knee, is it a suspension? The kneeing?
No.
Or the hit?
Yeah, the kneeing in the bottom of the pile when he presses his knee against his head.
I mean, I think you could give him a game. I mean, do I think it's a necessity? I don't know. I mean, I think it could be a play. I think it's something that will be looked at. I think it's probably going to be more likely to be a fine than a suspension. Because to me, again, it's not like the Ric Flair special where he lifts the knee up and drops it on him. But to me, I mean, Dave Lowry, when I asked him specifically about it, said he thought he might have slipped. To me, that was not a slip, Sean. That was a blatant attempt to go to the head with the knee. Again, was he lifting it back? I think he kind of leaned on him more than he sort of stepped on him. I mean, that's really, I don't know. I don't think it will result in a suspension. If it was one game, fine. I don't think that it's the end of the world if it's not one. But at the same time, I mean, it's probably something you don't want to see with any regularity. So if you want there to be a deterrent, maybe there is a suspension. But I don't know. But Lowry said Adam said his heat of the moment. He didn't seem to be overly bothered by it. He didn't like it. But, I mean, if it was something that he felt was obviously a suspendable... Sean, we've heard players react when they thought it should be a suspendable act. So, I don't know. I'm not indifferent, but I don't have a strong feeling either way. What do you think?
Well, a couple things here. Craig Zamzow says he thinks it's a one-game suspension, or asks that. I just wanted to bring this up while we've got this here. Craig Zamzow sent me a picture earlier, Ken. I'm not sure if I brought it up, but here
Amazing.
it is. With his, if you see in the background, there's a line named Morrissey, 2 Scheifele jerseys, but you'll also see a Sean's headband and a Kenny Wake Up K&R shirt. Craig, thank you so much for doing that. Like I said, everyone
Awesome.
out there, if you happen to have pictures of yourself with your gear, we'd love to see it. I wanted to bring this up as well. Blake Chris says, Kenny, can you please use a reusable K&R water bottle? Can't be crushing a new plastic bottle every game. What, Blake, are you talking about something like this? Now, I shouldn't be pulling this out right now. I don't know if
you should
do so, but this is going to be coming to the Sportsnet store. We are going to give you a little sneak peek of the stuff that's happening. Love this stuff, and we got more coming as well. I actually got a box of goodies right here that I probably shouldn't show off until we have our final sales meeting before we launch that. But keep an eye out for that. And Kenny, we will get you this thing so you can reuse it and stop wasting.
I'd be more than happy to.
Shame on you, Ken. Shame on you.
Hey, I'm the king. Hang on, I am the king of recycling. So
Me too. I wanted to say this. I agree with Craig Zamzow. I think it could be a one-game suspension. And I'll just say, because I think what happened there's no doubt in my mind. I think Dave Lowry was giving it an out because he didn't want it to get too heated. And I think he saw, I don't know if maybe he saw that Dean Evison was getting heated on the other side, and he didn't want to throw flames on that fire, knowing maybe you don't want to motivate this Wild team too much next week. Keep in mind, these are games that the Jets need to be winning if they need to get somewhere. They can't be fighting this war. They've got a different war they need to fight, but he didn't slip. Marcus Foligno did not slip. He got up on top of Adam Lowry. He was still trying to get at him, and that was the part of his body. And I'm gonna use an old senior hockey story, Ken, and maybe people are gonna think I was a cheap shot artist, and maybe they were right. I remember getting in a fight. We were playing the Stonewall Flyers. Stonewall Dave may like this one or may not like it at all. I'm not going to name the guy who I was fighting with. I've talked with him, seen him at Jets games. He's a good guy. He was a great hockey player.
Just mention his name then.
I'm not going to, but good hockey player, junior A hockey player, really good guy. Anyways, he stuck me during the game, and I went to go scrap him, and I dropped the gloves, and he dropped them, but he kind of seatbelted. He didn't want to fight. He did not want to fight, and I couldn't get a shot in him. It's one of these things where a guy kind of hurts you in the middle of the ice. Like I'm saying, Foligno got hurt earlier, and then you're frustrated, and you see red. People talking about red Renny in here. You see red, and you just want retribution so bad, right? And I remember getting in that fight, and I couldn't get a shot in on the guy, and he was kind of laughing at me throughout the whole thing because I couldn't get a shot in. Well, I got him down on the ice, and when the refs were in there, what I did was as simple as this, I just put my knuckles to his cheek, and I leaned on him. I just put my body weight on it with his head pressed against the ice. Well, he wasn't laughing anymore. He was kind of screaming in pain. It's painful to do that. And what I saw from Marcus Foligno was the exact same thing that I did in that game. It was a guy who's trying to get his pound of flesh at the end of a fight when you never got it. And that's what he was trying to do there. I don't think for a second that was a slip. That was him trying to get on top and apply pressure onto a player whose head was trapped to the ice. I don't think that's a precedent that can be set. The league needs to be able to say when the refs step in, it's over. You can't be trying to hurt a guy when the refs are in between, because Adam Lowry at that point is not only helpless because his back's to the ice, but he's helpless because he's got two refs in between him that is not allowing him to fight his way off the ice. He's a helpless player that Foligno took advantage of in that situation. Can't go on. I think there needs to be some punishment for that, and I think a one-game punishment would probably work in that situation.
And that's a dirtier play than the hit by Dylan. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter to me what Dean Evison is saying. I mean, I did not see that as a blindside hit. I think that Marcus Foligno, if you're going through the neutral zone with your head down, you should be expecting to be hit, is my personal opinion.
Let's go back to Heinola. I want you to expand on what you said there, because this is something that I don't know if we talked about it when we were upstairs, but I was watching that tonight, and I was talking with a couple of people online. I just really thought that, I mean, how many shots did he have and shots attempts did he have tonight? Got a goal stolen from him. Yeah. But holy smokes, if you want to get a good look at what Ville Heinola is capable and the amount of times that, you know, he's just suddenly there and a player can find him, and suddenly it's just him and the goalie getting a shot coming from the point. I mean, how hard is that to do, Kenny? How instinctual do you have to be as a defenseman to be that guy who just continually gets the puck and gets these free, wide open shots on the goaltender like Ville Heinola did tonight?
Yeah, 4 shots on goal and 9 attempts. 2 blocked, 3 missed the net. Really good scoring opportunities. Sean, this is what I loved about Heinola's game so far this year. After 2 kind of subpar, I mean, the first one we know was poor. The second one was probably subpar but better. The third one against St. Louis was excellent. Then, you know, you have the play that leads to the game-winning goal against. We debated that already last time. We're not going back into it. But this is what I love about Heinola. After, you know, a play that was pointed out by the coach, he did not get tentative on the ice. He still played an aggressive game. He played a smart game. He defended well. He was assertive on the ice. And he got involved offensively. At 5-on-5, when it was time to do it, he did. And then on the power play, Cole Perfetti and Ville Heinola, absolutely magical. The one power play alone, Cole Perfetti made 3 incredible passes. I think 2 of them were to Heinola. One of them resulted in a shot on goal. One of them resulted on a blast over the net. But again, this is what you love to see. And I think this is a smart move by Dave Lowry. You know what you want? You want Ville Heinola with the puck on his stick. You know where he gets the puck in his stick? On the power play. So I love that he had him together. And I like that he had him together with Cole Perfetti. Some folks freaking out saying, oh, Perfetti, oh, just put him in the slot on the top unit. Well, no, I mean, much like when Nikolai Ehlers is on the second unit, Perfetti is there because the power play can run through him. That's what we saw today. You have the shooter and Nate Schmidt at the top. You have Ville Heinola as a great cross-ice option. So, to me, Heinola, I loved what I saw. I mean, he only played 11 minutes and change, 11:05, 14 shifts, 133 of that was on the power play. Really strong game. No turnovers. I thought he did a nice job in the corners. His mobility, his exits were clean. Played a smart game. Managed the risk-reward factor incredibly well. And again, the ability to respond is something that he's done nicely now on 2 separate occasions. Now you need the consistency to start piling up. We talked about that about all the players. A lot of veterans need to play a more consistent game. But Ville Heinola, 2 out of his last 3 games were excellent. And the other one was mostly okay, you know, with the exception of maybe one overly aggressive play at a time where maybe a conservative play might have made more sense. But at the same time, you appreciate the intuition to get involved. You know, if the Jets are chasing the game, or if that's the first period, absolutely you want to see that happening. I mean, that's a good point about Perfetti. I mean, I've said this before, he's got a very good shot. He did look for a shot once on that one power play. Here's the other thing I like about Perfetti, Sean. We've talked about it briefly, but Perfetti's ability to defend is something that we're seeing a little bit more of. And that's something that, you know, you expect because of the hockey intelligence that he can handle that part of the job. But I loved what I've seen from him in the defensive zone. Yes, he did get pushed from the back by Jared Spurgeon, I think it was on one occasion. He got out-muscled the other day by Rasmus Ristolainen. Well, guess what? He's not nearly as big as Ristolainen. But he got up right away, and that's what happened. I love the offensive part of his game. So let's look at Perfetti quickly. 15-50, no shots on net today, 3 attempts, but a lot of really smart plays, and you saw his vision and passing ability on full display in this game tonight. So those two together, I mean, man, you're looking into the crystal ball in the future, and you're seeing, wow, those two guys together can make some serious magic. Impressive job by both young players at a time when the Jets need them to be performing.
So Stonewall Dave says, I'm ready for the Heinola era to start. And Justin Bunslick, I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, said earlier on, which I agree with him 100%. This was him showing you what he can do. This was, and to me, I think this is something that the Jets have been missing. Like, you can't get as many quality scoring chances as Ville Heinola got tonight without having a knack for finding that, right? Like, and this is just what we're seeing from the beginning. Now, you touched on that last game and the mistake that he made in Philadelphia, and we talked about that at length. I thought it was, there's a lot of people who were debating that. I thought it was the wrong play for him to make. He took a risk that didn't need to be made at that point of the game, and it came back on him. You know what? My guess is that is exactly who Ville Heinola is at this stage. Is he's a high reward, moderate risk player. And I think to get to being a high reward, low risk player, there's not a lot of those players that exist in the NHL nowadays. And like, if you're talking about guys, you're thinking of guys like Scott Niedermayer, right? Like, guys who just could jump up into the play at all times and almost never cost you. Roman Josi, I guess, is a good example of one of those guys who's in the league right now who's like that. Who knows? Maybe Ville Heinola can get to that point, right? But I think for the most part, we've seen this. You've talked about Mark Scheifele in the past about being, hey, not everyone is Patrice Bergeron who can score to the degree that you're, a top 20 scorer in the league and still be one of the best defenders in the league. Those guys, those are basically generational type players at doing that, right? There hasn't been another Bergeron in the league since Bergeron got into the league. He's absolutely phenomenal, although I guess a guy like Ryan O'Reilly would be close. But for the most part, if you're an offensive player, there's going to be a little bit of defensive risk involved in your game. I think the same thing applies when you're talking about defensemen, and I think that's probably what we're going to see from Ville Heinola. Is he going to get to a place in his career where he's the guy who almost never costs you defensively, but can open up the game offensively? I mean, if he can, the Jets have something really special on their hands. But to what Stonewall Dave is saying about ready for the Heinola era to start, I thought, to your point, he has responded, and we've seen some mistakes of his, and at this stage of his game, he's definitely a moderate to high risk player defensively often. But when you saw what he's capable of doing tonight, and if you partner him with a guy who is able to kind of erase some of those mistakes, and that's what you're looking for to play alongside a guy like that, boy, oh boy, he could add a dimension to the Jets game I don't think that they currently have right now, and any team could sorely use. Absolutely phenomenal. I love the fact that he's coming out and playing with confidence and not allowing that mistake that, if we trace it back, is the last game that he had, not allowing that to stay in the way of him showing what he's capable of offensively. He did a phenomenal job of that tonight. Getting to Perfetti, North End, go.
Just one quick one there. His ability to find quiet ice, Sean, is impressive, right? It's not just the ability to go when the puck is on your stick. Like, his ability to find the quiet ice, to create those lanes, including the first chance when he was absolutely robbed by Kakkonen, right? I mean, that was the one where he made the nice jump, the good read, and boy, oh boy, just about buried it there. I love that part of his game as well. Sorry, go back with Cole.
Well, so North End Rick texted me or messaged me through the game and was talking. Now, clearly we saw him talking earlier on in the chat room. He is extremely, extremely impressed with him. The one thing I would say, it's early on in his career. I will say this. Not that I don't believe that he's headed towards in a direction. I do think, and markets are going to have a tendency to be this. I think that people are hyping Cole Perfetti, and I understand why. I don't think his results, points wise, and we've talked about this before, aren't exactly lining up with the hype that's going on here. It's we're not talking about. I don't know. I don't want to go too deep down that road, but I do want to say Cole Perfetti shows a patience with the puck, a vision of the ice, so, hockey intelligence, and a calmness with the puck that is only going to lead to great things, right? Like the more that he starts to understand the NHL game and the way that players at this level move and the systems that are employed at this level, the more he gets to understand those things, and he'll figure it out quick because the kid is unbelievably smart already as it is. He is going to be capable of doing some absolutely phenomenal things. And I saw some people making the call for, interesting, on a night where the first line power play was pretty darn dangerous. I mean, Kyle Connor had a goal. He missed a wide open net. Mark Scheifele ends up scoring a goal. And basically that first line power play is the difference in the game here tonight. But man, oh man, when that secondary unit got out there, how impressive were they? And how much of that is a result of Cole Perfetti kind of quarterbacking this the way it goes? And I will say this. I made the statement when I started this little bit of a trip to the buffet here about I think people are maybe overhyping Cole Perfetti at this stage a little bit. I don't think the results we're seeing quite match what is being said about him right now. But Ken, a kid at that age controlling the play on a power play the way that he is, when's the last time you saw that?
Yeah, it's impressive. I mean, he just plays the game. I mean, it's so interesting, Sean, right? So many of the Jets' high-end prospects are burners, right? Mark Scheifele, powerful skater. Nikolai Ehlers, Kyle Connor. All those guys were burners, right? So when you see a cerebral player like Cole Perfetti, his ability to control the play, I loved a few times, even some simple plays on the cycle. He waits till the perfect time to draw a defender, then goes down low behind the net. I mean, I just love the way that he plays. Perfetti's not going to need 20 to 30 pounds. I don't think that was going to help his
comparison. I like this. I like that.
I think Mitch is a little bit more explosive of a skater, I would say, but in terms of how he just in terms of puck distribution and smarts, for sure, that's a great example. I mean, I'm really curious to see how it all fits together. I mean, Cole has done a great job of taking advantage of the opportunity. Sean, that's a big thing. Quickly, for folks who missed it, I mean, Nikolai Ehlers will not be back for the 14th. I mean, that was the first day he could return from his LTIR stint. Based on what we heard from Dave Lowry today, it's going to be at least 2 weeks and possibly 4. So Nikolai Ehlers is not coming on as the cavalry anytime soon. When Ehlers is back, I'm going to be curious to see how the lines fit together. I mean, there's still room right now for Cole Perfetti to play in the top 6. He's playing extremely well up there. But again, let's see how it goes this week coming up. I mean, the tests will keep coming for Cole Perfetti. He keeps answering the challenge. Next week's a tough week. That's 4 games and 5 nights, I think, right? Coming up, there's a big back-to-back in the middle of the week against some
Thursday, and then Saturday. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then Saturday.
Sorry, 5 games, I guess. So, sorry, I just want to switch gears. We've talked about those young guys a lot. To me, this is the most underreported story of the Winnipeg Jets season so far. And again, part of that is due to results not being good for the team. But there are a lot of folks who I don't think want to be checking their receipts from what they were saying in terms of Josh Morrissey not being able to return to form. Josh has been dynamite for the Winnipeg Jets this year. I asked him about it a little bit this morning. And true to form, Josh didn't really want to be heaping praise on himself. But I think that he's been, we talk about consistency. Kyle Connor, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and to me, the third guy on that list is Josh Morrissey for this year's Sean so far. He's been the Jets' #1 defenseman. He's helped them in all areas, and tonight was another game where he used his feet incredibly well. His puck distribution, as we were talking about with Perfetti, his exits were incredibly clean. And actually, I love the puck movement from Josh Morrissey at the top today. There was a lot more in and out, a little bit of interchanging happening. At one point, we saw Wheeler in that Scheifele one-timer position, getting off a really good shot. I like the distribution between Morrissey and Connor was solid. Between Scheifele and Morrissey, got a few shots through. Impressive season from Josh. And I mean, again, I understand. I mean, we've seen 11 Jets defensemen roll out there. We know what last year was a revolving door for Josh when it came to partners. We know he went through something incredibly emotional with his father getting cancer and eventually passing away. But Josh Morrissey deserves a lot of credit for his ability to play at a top pairing level through the first half of the year. And he had another excellent game in game 43, I guess it was tonight.
I want to talk just a little bit about like the subtlety of his game that I think makes him such an effective defenseman. So there was a play, I was watching Kaprizov tonight, right? Because here's the guy who's top 10 in the league who is one of these guys who seems to be able to find ice or barge in or is strong enough to go take ice, that the kind of ice that the Jets weren't giving up tonight. And so I was waiting for those moments for him to do that. There's a point where he gets the puck and works his way kind of down towards the slot. And he lets go a shot that if you take a look at it, they showed the rebound, the replay a couple of times. And the camera loses the shot because it is a whip, like it's a whip. It is gone, right? But it ends up being right up here on Connor Hellebuyck, and he snags it. He's got it. There's no problem with the play. The reason there's no problem with the play is because Josh Morrissey is the defenseman between Kaprizov and Hellebuyck. And so Josh Morrissey creates a spacing where Kaprizov knows that he's not going to deke through him, so he settles for the shot from the high slot, right? Once he settles for the shot, Josh Morrissey drops down to one knee and puts his skate in the way so that there's no way that he can shoot it along the ice, and there's no way he can shoot it towards his glove side. So now he's limited the net and where that puck can possibly go. And because Kaprizov probably was going to go in that direction in order to shoot around Josh Morrissey, instead of going glove side top corner, it ends up being center of the net right above the crest on Connor Hellebuyck. Now, yes,
in the first period.
Agreed, yeah. Saw that earlier. So let me just finish this off here before we move through it. Not only does he instantaneously recover from that, now there was no rebound, so there was no danger, but he doesn't know that. All he knows is a shot is released. And after he releases the shot, Kaprizov tries to go around Josh Morrissey to make it to the net in case there is a rebound to try and bash something in. There is no rebound, but it doesn't mean that you're not trying to get in the way of that guy. Well, Josh Morrissey, after going down and limiting where he can shoot that shot, is instantly back up on his feet in between Kaprizov and the net, drags him to the net behind Connor Hellebuyck, puts him into the net, and gives him a little bit of a shot afterwards, just to kind of let him know, like, let the opposing team's best offensive player know that he's in his kitchen. Every single thing about that play from start to finish is defensive perfection. He absolutely creates a scenario where he makes his goaltender's job easier, Kaprizov's job harder, and that ends with Kaprizov. If he was frustrated before that, he's going to be a little more frustrated now because Josh Morrissey just gave him a little bit of the business after the whole thing was said and done, which fit with the theme of this game. And I honestly thought showed, you were talking about this, if the Jets ever did get into the playoffs against a team like the Minnesota Wild, boy, oh boy, did we not learn here tonight that getting in their kitchen and getting them upset is a good way to take this team out of their wheelhouse? And that goes right from Foligno and Greenway and from the big boys right to the guys like this. Hartman didn't look like much to me tonight. Kaprizov, you could see little flashes, but we didn't see anything compared to what we've seen before. This, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the best players in the league the last 2 years, as close to unstoppable as it gets outside of guys like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. But again, I go back to that, and I'm not going to, you've said everything that needs to be said with Josh Morrissey, but the subtleties of Josh Morrissey's game are things that I don't think a lot of people recognize. He is a tough player to play against and a leader at all times. Great to see him having a bounce back season and playing the way he's playing. Where do you want to go from here, Ken?
Quick one on Kaprizov. As great a job as the Jets did of containing him, he still had 7 shots on net today. Yeah. 7 shots. The play that he made to create the space when he went down one-on-one on Nate Schmidt, his ability to go fake inside, get Schmidt to pull, and then go back outside, and then Hellebuyck just gave her the big Patrick Waugh special, the old windmill. That was an excellent play there. I agree with you. The Jets did a great job of winning the net front battle. They did a great job of boxing out in front of their own net, and they got to the net extremely well. I mean, I touched on it at the front, but we should go here next. Sean.
Yeah, Andy Johnson said the same thing. Let's go here.
Yeah, I mean, so let's start. I'm going to start with Scheifele. We know, I mean, I wrote the column. Mark Scheifele needed to be the best version of himself. Today, he was very close to the best version of himself. His engagement level was up, and he was very involved offensively, and I thought his defensive awareness was back at a higher level. I said it with Hustler before the break. I said Mark Scheifele looks like a guy who needs to get to a break. He admitted this morning that getting away from the game for 5 days really helped him feel energized. He looked energized. If Mark Scheifele can play like that for the last 39 games, the Jets are going to be in a lot of games. I mean, we know they also did this without Pierre-Luc Dubois. And Sean, let's be honest. This was a game that Pierre-Luc Dubois would have been absolutely thriving in. He would have been in the grill of Kaprizov. He would have loved to go head-to-head with Joel Eriksson Ek, who also was fantastic. And I know folks think that I'm going overboard with this when I talk about David Gustafsson. The Jets need David Gustafsson to grow into a Joel Eriksson Ek type of player. He's going to break in on the fourth line, just like Joel Eriksson Ek did. But because of his ability to make the guys around him better, that's why he can move up in the lineup eventually. Obviously, he needs to get healthy first, but that's the kind of guy that he can grow into. Scheifele, I liked a lot about his game. He knew the pressure was on. He played 24-01, 3 shots, 5 attempts, 70% in the circle. I mean, that's a secondary thing, but it's an important thing for him because the Jets don't have a lot of right-handed shot face-off guys. And in terms of Hellebuyck, I think he was very solid, rock solid. Yes, he gave credit to his teammates, but that's the kind of game that he needed. He hadn't won in 8. This was 8. He had gone 7 starts without a win. I mean, and his numbers, we know, are down, the raw numbers. But, I mean, this is not to point the finger, but if the Jets want to make a run, they need Hellebuyck playing at an elite level. Today, he was, as good as it gets. Didn't give up anything.
So, I'll say this before I get to him. Let's talk about Mark Scheifele. I was on the pregame show with Kelly on 680 CJOB, and we talked a little bit about this. It was an interesting availability with Scheifele before the game. Now I had to step out and take a phone call because I was booking Sheldon Kennedy, who's supposed to be on the long form Kenny and Renny show, not this Thursday, but the following Thursday. And so I missed some of this. So I wanted to get your take on your thoughts on Mark Scheifele, because I don't want to put words in Kelly's mouth, but he did seem to take from that Mark Scheifele kind of doubled down on what we saw from, or what we heard from the last time, the comments that you didn't like, and that we had a little bit of a row over in one of the Kenny and Renny shows.
Right.
In that it sounded like he still seems to be a guy who, is saying he's not sure of the direction or what is, wanted from some of the players out there. What was your take on the comments that he had before the game?
Yeah, I didn't view it the same way. Scott Billick and I had a similar discussion. To me, this was Mark just kind of speaking in code. I don't think that, here he was saying, it wasn't the way I prided myself in. I've just got to continue to play my game, try to play the game the right way, try to play the system that we have set in front of us, and just go from there. To me, I did not interpret that as a shot at the system that is they're being asked to play. I just thought that was kind of Mark speaking in, player mumbo jumbo. I thought that he looked to me a lot more positive and in a better headspace than he was before he went into the break. So for me, that did not set off any alarm bells where it did the last time.
Yeah.
That was my personal take on the situation. And I also thought that Mark seemed very engaged, and I thought that he showed accountability. He flat out said that it wasn't at his level. There was a little bit of playfulness in Mark's banter when Kelly asked the follow-up question about drilling down into some of the specifics. Mark knew exactly what those specifics were, but this to me was, this was Mark saying, it doesn't matter what I say, I need my actions to speak for myself. So I actually love that answer. In the media, we always love that guys be a little bit more expansive, especially for radio. But I actually liked that version of the answer because to me, my interpretation was exactly what I just shared. It doesn't matter what Mark says. He needs to deliver on the ice. Today was step one in terms of delivering, and he did just that.
So I think that step one is an important thing to put out here, because Partisan Paul, I think he's entirely right. He says Scheifele was okay. He must have another gear, right? I'll say this. We've seen Mark Scheifele be absolutely dominant offensively in the past. I think a lot of people are waiting for that to happen. But to your point, I think the Winnipeg Jets, the last thing they need is to lose a game like this 7-5. And yeah, okay, Mark Scheifele got 2 goals and 2 assists and gets 4 points out of it. It's going to be meaningless if they don't win. They needed to go out and did, and showed that they can take on a really tough opponent, shut them down, and win a game in a way where they just simply outwork another team. Mark Scheifele, what he showed me tonight is that he was entirely committed to the team game. He was committed to the defensive side of the game, to being on the right side of the puck, to making the right decisions, and waiting to get the offense if the offense came. And to me, to your point, that's a first step. Now, did he show, like, he didn't look like one of the top 5 players in the world by any means tonight. And so I think I'm entirely in agreement with a lot of the chat room when they say that, but that wouldn't have been that wasn't what they needed from him tonight. What they needed from him tonight was exactly what he gave them: defensive responsibility and an engagement and a willingness to play the game the right way. And I thought it had to come, Ken, because if you take a look, I love how Dave Lowry handled this situation earlier on. We were in the pregame media avail, and I'd asked Dave Lowry kind of point blank, had Mark Scheifele had the proper effort level so far this season? And it was like, we joked about it earlier. I asked Nate Schmidt a question earlier on, I don't know, about 5 or 6 avails ago, and he took an 8-second pause to think about the question before he answered it. And I seem to be on a little bit of a roll of like asking guys questions where they freeze for about 3 or 4 seconds and respond. I asked Dave Lowry that question, and he just stared at me and didn't respond for about a good 2 to 3 seconds. It doesn't sound like a long time. It felt like an eternity. The way that he was
1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000.
I was like, but and it's a tough question. It's a direct question, but I mean, this is what everyone's talking about. What have we been talking about in the chat room? What has been the obvious thing that people have been seeing is that they haven't been getting the effort from Mark Scheifele that they feel that he needs, especially on the defensive side of things. I like the way that he responded to it and said, he wasn't going to go down the direction and analyze the effort level of one player. The whole team needed to be better. And the fact of the matter is, it's right. But to your point, leaders got to lead. Your best players, in order for the Jets to get out of this, need to be their best players. So you can't have one of your leaders not leading and expect everyone else to follow. So you got that from him tonight. The other thing I loved about how Dave Lowry handled that is he said, to the point you were saying about your best players being your best players, he called Mark Scheifele their best player. He said he is our best player. If you're Mark Scheifele, and I don't know what's going on behind the scenes there, and I think that both of us have felt that maybe there's a little bit of Mark Scheifele, from, if we can glean from his comments, thinking that maybe he isn't in complete and total agreement with, the plan that Dave Lowry has for this team, or maybe he doesn't see the plan, that laid out in front of him the way he would like to see it. But if that coach, who is trying to get you to play his way, and there seems to potentially have been maybe some miscommunication there, when that coach comes out and says, listen, this is our best player, and we need him to play like he's our best player, I don't know how you don't respond to that if you're a guy who's got, ambition and the juice that we've seen from Mark Scheifele in the past. And I think that that's what Dave Lowry appealed to. And so what he saw tonight from Mark Scheifele is, if Mark Scheifele wasn't going to show up in this game, and if he wasn't going to play the right way, after Dave Lowry went to bat and said, this is our best player and we need him to be our best player, then to me, there's nowhere else to look other than directly at Mark Scheifele on why things aren't going the way they want for him in his game and for this team. So I thought that was a tidy bit of coaching by Dave Lowry, slow golf clap for him on his way out of the room after that, and how this team responded. This, to me, I thought was a connection between Dave Lowry and the rest of the team that had not existed to this strength to this point of this season. And I'm interested to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, and a quick one here to follow up. And again, obviously it helped that Pierre-Luc Dubois was not in the lineup in this case. But Sean, in a game...
Interesting take.
No, hang on. No.
Yeah.
That's not. I'm not saying there's a direct correlation. What I am saying was with Dubois not in the game, in a game where there were no flybys by Mark Scheifele, whose line was on the ice when the net was empty. Yeah. Guess what, Mark? When you play the way I ask you to play, I will get you on the ice for a cookie, right? I mean, there was a lot of coaching going on, both on the psychological side and on the actual tactical side today, Sean, from Dave Lowry when it pertains to Mark Scheifele. And I think that was smart. That's when you get the reward. You don't get the reward it's not an automatic reward, but if you do play this way, and if you are one of the best players, then you will be rewarded with that extra ice time and give the guy a chance to get back to being a point-a-game player. I thought, again, both parties handled things well. I think that Dave Lowry showed faith in Mark Scheifele, and Mark Scheifele showed Dave Lowry why he can have faith in him. Now it's a matter of doing it for an extended period of time, because much like many players on the Jets, the level of play has been up and down, and the Jets can't afford there to be much down when it comes to the play of Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuyck specifically during the second half, because of the ability of those two players to impact the game.
Well, and so this is what I wanted to talk about to close out this show, because this is
Sure.
the interesting part of this, right? Like, we saw how good the Jets could be against St. Louis, and then we saw them follow it up with an absolute stinker against the Philadelphia Flyers. And, the question was asked earlier on in the chat room, is this the turning point, right? Well, how many times have we asked ourselves that this season? I think we asked ourselves that when the Jets beat the Blues, shortly after Paul Maurice left in Dave Lowry's second game. I think that was the question, right? Is this the time? And, time and time again, this team has shown us that they're capable of so much and then capable of so little right after. So that becomes the question, is can they sustain this? Now, I'm going to be like the optimist and look at the glass half full situation in this and think like, okay, yeah, they've lost, I think they've lost, 6 of their last 8 games, but of their last 3 games, 2 of those were almost exactly what you need from this team. So I'm prone to thinking that, it's not always a straight line. It's not always a straight line. Sometimes you go up and down a little bit. I'd like to think, if you're the Winnipeg Jets, that game against Philly was a little bit of a jag, but they're starting to head in this direction. And if they are, the question for me is, can they play this blueprint? That's the next question for me, because if you take a look at what a grind it's going to be throughout the next month of February and even in March, can this team play this game, this blueprint, Ken, down the stretch without gassing? Because that's my last question for this show, and what I want your take on.
Well, I mean, it's going to be difficult, especially given the 40 games in 81 days, but again, Sean, I go back. I mean, this is a much different team, obviously, but I mean, the thing that we heard so often in that 2018 run, that's the Jets. That's how the Jets had to play, but it was a taxing way to play. Guess what? There's no choice. If the Jets want to qualify for the playoffs, even get themselves back in striking distance, that has to be the blueprint. And if it's not the blueprint, they're not going to blow the doors off teams and win games 7-5. They need to be a strong defensive team. They need to be opportunistic. They need to have strong special teams, and they need to have physical play plus intensity. But this is a skilled hockey team that has skill. They need to be committed, and on the nights when they are committed, on the nights where they win the net front battle, on the nights when they get excellent goaltending, they can win games. I mean, the problem for the Jets, Sean, is not how they played today. It's the fact that they didn't play that way enough times in the first 43. That is why they have the predicament that they're in. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, 1 in a row doesn't mean anything. But the Jets need to rattle off 3 out of the 3. I mean, Hustler was talking about this today. It's Rick Ralph, our old colleague Rick Ralph would always say 10-game segments or 5-game segments. Well, the Jets need to go 3 out of 5. There it is.
Yeah.
A lot of 3 out of 5s. If the Jets play 600 hockey or better,
that's exactly what it'll take. 3 out of 5s for the rest
almost
of the
every
season
time.
Is exactly
8 segments.
What it will take to slip into the playoffs. Exactly. I'll say this. I'll say this. I think you take a look at the Winnipeg Jets team tonight, and I asked about that blueprint to Dave Lowry, and he'd said, like, it's not going to look like that with that kind of with scraps like we saw, like that much hate. It's not going to look like that every night. And the Winnipeg Jets probably are definitely going to gas themselves if they walk out and have 3 fights every single night from now until the end of the season. I don't think that's part of the blueprint. I will say this. I thought that the Jets were extremely aggressive, but in a smart way that I don't think was overly taxing. And Dave Lowry said they played the game the right way. They were on the right side of the puck. I think if you're on the right side of the puck, you don't have to move as much, right? It's all about being smart and being in the place where you're most helpful, and that is typically close to the puck with a good gap, but in between the puck and your own net, right? When you're doing things defensively. So I will say this: the Jets, I sat and I watched time and time again, but you get sucked into the puck and all that kind of stuff. I hope the Jets play this similar style and they pull it out for a couple more games, because I need to take more looks at this and see what they're doing right, because they did, I thought, just a phenomenal job. And they did a phenomenal job keeping the Minnesota Wild from the front of the net. And I need to go back and look at the game tape on how they did it, Ken, because they did it and they didn't seem to have to battle like crazy to do it. They just did it the right way. And so I'll say this: if the Winnipeg Jets, if that's their blueprint, if they can pull off the kind of hockey that they pulled off tonight, which I think was hardworking, but not overly hardworking, playing the right way, having the right mindset, being in the right spot and doing things right, trying to win the game first and not just score your way through the game, like we've seen from this team so much in the past, they can give themselves a chance. Like you said, 3 out of 5. If you break it up into 5-game segments, they got to go 3 for 5, basically every single one of those 5-game sets toward the end of the season, and that may just allow them to sneak into that 8th spot. But boy, oh boy, if they play like they did tonight, I think they've got a chance of doing it without gassing themselves, and then heading into the playoffs playing the right way. Boy, oh boy, that's I mean, it's a tall order. I'm not saying from one game that I think it's happening, but the blueprint that we were talking about not existing not too long ago, or the team not feeling they had an identity, if that's their identity, if that's their blueprint, this team can at the very least has a map that can lead them to a potential playoff berth. Ken, do you have anything to say before we head out?
No, you covered it well there. And I mean, the 2 out of 3, they've done it 2 out of 3 now. You're right. St. Louis did not play its best. The Wild maybe was not at its best, but they were still very good. That was still an identity game by the Minnesota Wild.
Totally.
So those are, I mean, too, we talked about it earlier. You got to do it consistently. The Jets are playing a lot of tough teams in the second half, but the other side of that coin, as we talked about, with 5 consecutive games coming out of the break against Central Division teams, Sean, the only way to catch the teams that you're playing is to beat the teams that you're chasing. So the Jets were able to do that twice in their last 3 games. Obviously, they had a big-time hiccup against the Philadelphia Flyers. This weekend's games are incredibly important in that run, because these are excellent teams, right? I mean, the Dallas Stars are on a roll. I mean, they're ahead of the Jets. The Nashville Predators, I think the last time we checked, are still in second place, and with the Jets beating the Wild, will remain in second place in the division. So there's some tough tests ahead, and guess what? Here's the other part. Great that the Jets did it once against the Wild. Can they do it again next week when they roll into town for the second time and the 4th and final time in the season series? Because that's another game. We know that the Wild aren't going to like how today went. So, I mean, fascinating times ahead. And we should also say to folks that have been waiting, Jets general manager Kevin Cheveldayoff will be addressing the media tomorrow after practice, I believe. So that'll be something that I believe we're going to stream on our Twitter, the Sportsnet Twitter account, live tomorrow when that presser is happening. I would imagine sometime after 1 p.m. with the Jets skate at noon here. So folks that are interested in that can keep their eyes wide open. I'll have the link on Twitter as well. But awesome to be back, folks. Glad you fired up, and we'll be fired up again next time we're on.
Yeah, I was going to say, to your point about the Dallas Stars, never mind the fact that the Jets got to go 3 for 5 in their 5-game sets down the stretch here. I think you got to circle the Dallas Stars games that remain on the calendar, because One, I don't think the Jets are catching anyone else in the Central Division. They've just got too far of a lead.
Yep.
I think that 8th spot is all that remains for the Jets to grab. And I'll tell you this, it doesn't matter how teams fall apart in the Pacific. If the Jets can't get ahead of the Dallas Stars, they are not making the playoffs. It's as simple as that. So I take a look at those games. There are no more important games left on the schedule than those Dallas Stars games. So there is a lot at stake for the next one. And we can't wait to talk with you about it after it's all said and done. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thursday as well. Thursday we're back.
Thursday as well. Yeah, we haven't totally completed our roster, but we do know we're going to have Christina Rutherford, who, if you've been reading her Olympic coverage right now at Sportsnet, is absolutely phenomenal and one of my favorite people in this industry. We've had some good times on the road, Christine and I. She's going to be a ton of fun to have on the show. Hey, if you haven't done so already, click the subscribe button and click like while you're here. It sure helps us a lot, and it helps us reach more people. Hey, we want to have a big, nice, fat, jolly chat room. So the more people you can bring in there, your likes and your subscriptions help us do that. Thank you so much for joining us. We can't wait to see you. We will talk to you on Thursday for our long form show. Talk to you then.